Okay, hey guys. I think I am officially live. So if you can see me, okay, hey guys. I think I am officially, sorry about that. If you can hear me and if you can see me, I think the live chat should be open. So let me know where you guys are tuning in from so we can say hi. And let me see. Okay, so I see about 6 people on right now, and I'm gonna just wait a couple more minutes before we officially start. But welcome to my studio. I've done these live videos so many times before, and I feel like even though I've done these, the first one is always still gives me butterflies. So just so glad you guys are able to tune in. I know that this time is not perfect for everyone because we have so many students from all over the world. So I really do appreciate that you guys are here and hanging out with me. Hi, Carol. Hi, Jennifer. I just see GH, so I'm not really sure what your first name is, but hello from Melbourne. So glad it's working. Last time we did this for my last round of students. Sometimes the live chat wasn't working and we had some technical issues, but I'm super excited. I think that's Erica. Hi, Carol. I know this is not really my comfort zone for sure. I knew it. Hi, Erica, it's my friend. It's definitely not my comfort zone to like do these live videos, but I still wanted to offer it so that we can connect on a personal basis and so that I can answer any questions you guys might have live and be able to show you guys some homework examples and answer questions and demonstrate anything that you guys might want to see me do in person. I know that through the live videos, it brings in like a different element that I might not be able to provide through the video lessons through the course. So hopefully this will bring in a bit of a personal aspect to the course as well as allow you guys to continue to ask questions and know that I'm doing my best to answer any questions you guys have, or if you need help with troubleshooting. I wanted to also take this 1 hour to do that. So, hi Elna from London. I'm just gonna wait. I think we have like 1 more minute. So I'll just wait 1 more minute for people to tune in and then I'll go over kind of like what we'll be doing for the next hour. And then you guys are free to leave, come back on. This link is gonna be on like shared through the forum so that you guys can watch it again later. If you have any questions, you can actually post your questions on the live chat because I can see it now. Hi Dolly from California. I was out this afternoon with my dad working at a cafe, and my dad's from New York, and he was like, oh, California is so nice, the weather is so amazing. So my family's been really enjoying being in California with us. Okay, so I'm gonna start. It's 3 o'clock. I wanna respect your time as well as let you guys know that I'm here until 4 o'clock for the next hour. So pretty much the schedule for this session that we'll be doing for the next hour is I'm gonna kind of go through some homework examples. I printed out some examples here. So we're just gonna go through some good things I'm seeing and maybe some tips and pointers of things that I would like you guys to work on as you move forward with the course. And then we're gonna go into answering questions, like common questions I've gotten through the forum as well as through email. And then the last portion will be for any demonstrations as well as taking on live question and answer time. So pretty much that's going to be the flow for these live sessions. But first of all, I wanted to say thank you guys so much for just engaging with each other and encouraging each other through the forum, the discussions. It really does make me so happy as an instructor, seeing you guys just kind of embrace each other and just be in it with each other in this journey. You know, when people are asking questions, I might not get to it right away, so I see other students responding, encouraging when people are posting their homework. You guys are just so amazing to make this experience so fun and just full of like love and support. So thank you guys so much. The second thing I wanted to share was definitely to give you guys, remind you to give yourself grace and to just enjoy this whole journey. This is my 4th year of you know, doing calligraphy, and I feel like every year I'm always learning something new, or I want to you know, work on like maybe a specific, you know, thing that I see lacking, or I want to try and challenge myself to do more larger pieces. And so I know for many of you, this might be like your first course that you've taken ever, you know, for calligraphy or pointed pen, and it's a lot. I think I read a comment, somebody saying how, oh my, it's like so much to think about, like the slants, the square tops, the nib, how do I hold the pen, like the paper's not working, and those are just all common, and it doesn't mean that there's something wrong. For me, it took me more than a couple months to even just get comfortable holding the pen, or to understand how to make the basic strokes with a nib and ink. And so I want to just encourage you guys that you are not alone, and that the things that you're going through is all normal and is part of the process of learning. So just please just enjoy like this journey, and give yourselves like some bad days, some good days. For me too, there are days when I can't seem to write anything, and you know, even just trying to write one word, or my hand is not cooperating, or, you know, after like 5 minutes, I just want to give up. During those days, I just actually like just put my pen down and I go out, you know, for lunch, or I do something completely like unrelated to calligraphy, and just to give myself that break, and my hands like less of a pressure, I guess. And sometimes we need that. We need that space and time to just not focus so much on trying to get everything perfect. And so please remember that it's really, I am kind of challenging you guys to be very technical, but at the same time, I do want to encourage you guys to have fun and to not be so hung up on just getting everything so perfect. So post your work, ask questions. This is all part of the learning experience. So hi, Claudia. Hi, Blue. I think Jennifer. Marcia. Hello, Lydia. Hope I'm saying that correctly. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in again. So hopefully this time will be valuable to you as you guys are here live. And I am going to get started with the homework. Okay, so I printed out just a couple of homework. I did look over like all of, just like quickly glance through everyone's homework, and I just want to say you guys did such a great job. There's so many great homework things that I could have printed out. I only was able to print out a couple, and I'm going to use that as a guide to show you what I'm looking for. Oh, it's Kyung-hee. Hello. I'm going to try to, you know, I have my live chat window open next to me here, so I'll be able to glance back and forth. But I'm going to switch cameras right now, and I'm going to just switch over to my my document camera so that I can show you guys. Let me see. Okay, sorry. I don't see my, okay, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to my document camera. So this is where I'm going to be able to show you guys some of the examples. So I'm going to just make sure this is working. Great. Okay. So I should adjust this camera. Okay. Hi, John. Hi, Beatrice. Thank you guys for tuning in. Okay, so let me just zoom this camera out a bit. Okay, so the homework for Module 2 was all about warm-up exercises. So I wanted to see how you guys are doing your exercises for both the pencil as well as using your nib. Okay, so this is a homework by Grace. I'm gonna zoom it out a little more so you guys can see better. Okay, so this is really great homework. I wanted to point out that I love the consistency that I see here. Right away, when I'm looking at this piece of paper, I'm seeing all of these slant lines are all on the 55-degree slant. So as you can see from afar, you can see that there's a lot of consistent lines being shown here. I see a difference between the thicks and the thins, which is really important for copperplate because copperplate is all about pressure and release. So you do want to have the distinction between your thins as well as your thicks. So immediately from this page, I see a contrast between her starting point and then as she's gradually becoming thicker. But let me go in to zoom in a little bit. Okay, let me know if you guys, okay. So here, the first part is all about the thick lines. And so what I'm looking for is just making sure that the width from the top and the bottom are similar in width. Because there's going to be letters that we're going to be working on. Once we get to the lowercase letters, we want to make sure that letters like D or P, those kind of letters are going to have a consistent width from the top and the bottom for these downstrokes. Okay, so I love like this consistency here, the straight. The width from here to here is on the slant. Sometimes I get a ruler. It's good to have a ruler nearby. And then you can go along your slant line with your ruler and then just make sure that if I were to draw a line across that stroke right there to make sure that it's on the slant. So usually when you're self-critiquing your work, you want to have a ruler nearby. I usually have any like red pen nearby and just want to be able to know what I'm looking for. And so that's also something that I want to train you guys to know how to do when you're also looking at your work and practicing. Okay, so here again, I'm just going through this line up here. This is all your to make sure you have the same pressure from top to bottom. The square tops and bottoms, I did get a lot of questions about that. I am going to address it a little bit today, but actually I do go into the square tops and bottoms for the next module. So I can also address it more for the next live video for the square tops and bottoms. Okay, so that's the main thing I'm looking for is for this top part here and the width of this to be the same. Then when I go down to your thick to thin, I want to make sure that, you know, it's not of a drastic release, but there's a gradual release. So, you know, this one stuck out to me as really good. If you have a heavier hand, you might notice that your pressure is going to be thicker, which is totally fine. This whole exploration week, I would like to call it, there's a time for you guys to just get to know your hand, get to know how much pressure you naturally exert out of your hand when you're using the nibs, which nib you prefer. So definitely explore different nibs. I know you guys tried the Nico G. Some of you guys think it's really stiff, but some of you guys think you're able to get really like thick shades out of that. And so that just shows how unique we all are. And so definitely like keep exploring. These are all good. This is, you know, still, even though this point here is thicker than this one, I do still see a contrast and a gradual release. So there's not an issue with that. I can tell that like as she continued to do these strokes, her hand started getting lighter. As you can tell, like here she started off pretty thick, and then like here, you know, maybe as she was getting into the rhythm of things, you can see that it's getting lighter. This is really nice. She even has like the square top on here on the top. Next row is for the thins to thick. Here, actually, for this stroke, it's a little bit big of a jump going from this thin to the thick. So I would try to continue to work on controlling your nib so that it's more of this stroke right here. As you can see, this one is more of a gradual increase of pressure. And we're gonna need this particular stroke for even flourishing or later when you guys are working on other letters. We are actually going to need to use this specific thin to thick stroke. So just keep in mind that all the exercises and the homeworks that you're doing is really, it has a purpose to it. Hi, Paige. Hi, Christine and John. Okay, so so this is something to keep in mind to make sure that you're not all of a sudden increasing pressure to have this pool of ink starting at this point. So when I'm looking at these strokes, I would actually suggest maybe from like the 1/3 mark, every third. So maybe start off with the point, and as you get to the second third of the stroke, to transition into the gradual pressure, and then the last part should be all thick, all full pressure stroke. You can, yes, if you have a question that you want to ask as I'm doing this, you can also ask too. I'm going to be looking at the live chat, so I'll be able to see your questions. So, okay, so yeah, feel free to ask questions, and then if I can't get to it right away, I'll definitely address it at the end. And then the thin to thick to thins are looking all good here too. I see definitely it's centered in the middles, which is where you want your the thickest part of your stroke to be. Let me see. This one was submitted by Satar, and actually for what Satar did was he took my guide sheet and then he added a couple more lines so that you're able to add in more of these. So I actually asked him to email it to me so that I can make it available to the whole class. This is a great idea so that you guys don't have to guess where the lines are, and this is, allows you to be able to practice using the lines, you know, closer together as opposed to the ones that I provided for you. So thank you so much, Satar, and please email this over to me and I'll make sure that all the students receive it as well. Jennifer asked, would all the lines look different depending on the nibs? Yes, I do feel in terms of pressure, because some nibs like this one that I'm using today is going to be the Hunt 22, but let me see if I have another one. Let's see. I know other calligraphers, if you have seen them on Instagram, they use like Hunt 101 or they'll use like Jalad 303. I actually don't use those nibs because they're very, like they're not stiff nibs. I guess they're called like sensitive nibs. The tines split really easily. And so I just find it really hard to control those type of nibs. So I do think that if you are using, like depending on the nib that you're using, you might be able to achieve like thicker strokes, and then like the amount of control that you have over the nib can vary depending on what you use. So that's something to keep in mind. So usually when I'm working on a piece, like a final project, let's say, I don't want to just jump into it using a new nib because I want to be able to make sure that I know how to control the nib and I have full confidence using the nib before I do a final piece. So the ones that I usually gravitate towards are the ones that I recommend for beginners. Also because, not because I like them, but because when I've met and taught a lot of beginners, these are the nibs that they also really enjoyed as well. So hopefully that answers your question, Jennifer. Okay, great, Lydia. sorry to hear you have the flu, but definitely you can catch up and just practice whenever you can. I mean, this is just a suggested schedule if you want to just stay, you know, with us throughout the course, but totally understandable if some things come up or if you have to just take a break and rest for a little bit. So this was again Sitar's work, and again, notice how the first thing that people look at when they see your piece and your writing is going to be the slant, which is why I'm doing a lot of emphasis on keeping the slant for the beginning portion of the course. I think once we jump right into letters or words or capital letters, it's really hard for us to hone in on the details of being able to execute the strokes on the slant. And so, you know, the beauty of copperplate comes from a couple of things. You know, I think I love copperplate because of the like slanted script. I love it because of the pressure release that really swells and the delicate hairlines. And so, which is why I really want to encourage you guys to be able to execute these and work on your basic drills and your nib exercises until you're able to do all these strokes consistently. Okay, so Paige asked, regarding shaky lines, what would you suggest that we focus on to avoid the shaky lines? Actually, shaky lines are okay. Not that it's okay, but in terms of like when you're just starting off and you know, you're this whole like pen holder and nib is just such a foreign object to many of us. I mean, we're so used to just writing with like this type of a pen where it's straight and the way we hold it is different. The way we, you know, are able to execute like the ink, we don't have to worry about the ink blobbing out, or it's just so different. So if your hand is shaking a little bit, if your lines aren't as smooth, I wouldn't like concern too much over that. Even when I first began, I had a lot of shaky lines, but my teacher told me to just focus on your forms. Focus on making sure you're on slant, focus on having the correct letter forms over the shakiness, because I was told, and also I've experienced myself, that over time, as you become more confident in your ability to use this particular tool, your lines and your confidence are going to show through your lines, and it's going to improve. Okay, Erica was asking, I find that I keep moving my wrist or fingers rather than my arm, and if I try to move my arm instead, I feel I lose my stability and get inconsistent lines. This is a great question, and actually this is something that I've written down to actually demo for you guys towards the latter part of the session. So if you guys can just hold tight, I do want to show you guys like a better demonstration for that particular question about finger movement, arm movement, what are we supposed to do, how are we supposed to practice, and all that. So that's a great question. I'm going to get to that really soon. I'm just going to show you guys a couple more homeworks, and then we can move on to, you know, demoing and answering some questions. Okay, so so this one, it was submitted by Lenny. Again, great homework. I just want to point out something I do love about this homework was his the way that he utilized his space for these ovals, for his figure eights. Even figure eight exercises are really important because it helps us to not only, these exercises should help us with our whole arm movement, meaning that when I'm doing like these figure eights, let me try to zoom out so you can hopefully see my wrist. Okay. So here I actually have my arm. Okay, I'm showing. Okay, my you know, the bottom of my forearm is going to be at the edge of the desk, as I was showing you guys through the course. Okay, so it's so this is where I was showing you guys to write, like using like this kind of a posture when you're sitting down at your desk. So when you do these figure eights, the purpose of this, you can keep your arm anchored, you know, at your desk. But when you're doing them, you notice, look right here where my wrist is. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit more. Let me see. Okay, so if you take a look right here, okay, so I actually, so also remember to wear a guard when you're writing so you don't have like stickiness of your hand on the paper. I do have a sock that I did I do have cut up that I use. You can just cut the top and cut a place for your hand, and then just to make sure that you have no oils when you're on the paper. But just to show you guys my wrist, I'm not gonna wear the guard. You can also use a plain card. I have my son's Pokemon card. As long as it has that sheer, like it has the ability to glide, you know, it's great. So you can also put that underneath your wrist to make sure that you're not getting stuck on your paper. Okay, so when you're doing these figure eights, I have seen some people homeworks where, I think this is by Mabel, where the figure eights were really small. And I want to encourage you guys to go big, like Lenny did, because the reason why is because this is a different kind of exercise that we're doing compared to these ovals. These ovals, definitely, you're not going to be keeping your whole arm off the table. I would actually, for these oval exercises, you want to anchor your forearm on the table. And then when I'm doing these ovals, let me see if I can show you better like that. Okay, do you see how like I'm rocking my arm? Like it's still pivoted here at the forearm. You know, I don't have my elbow on the desk, but I still have it anchored at my forearm. And as I'm doing the ovals, this is the movement that you should see with your arm. You see, look here and then look over here. So if you look at my wrist, you don't see this movement where I'm just moving my wrist. But when I'm doing these ovals, I want to keep this whole arm like as one unit. I don't want to see any movement from here forward, or, you know, and this shouldn't be off the table because the ovals are not like a big shape. And so when I'm doing these ovals, this is what we're seeing. So when we go back here, like I'm doing these ovals like this, and I'm not moving my wrist. Okay, so for the figure eight, something that you could try if you want to really work on loosening up your arm and your arm movements is you can actually lift up your whole arm off your desk, and then just gliding at the side of your hand here, you're gonna just make these figure eights across your paper. So it's better to do these figure eights kind of like wider and longer and to take up your whole page, because the purpose of this is to just kind of work on both gliding of your hand. You know, you can work on your, like just moving your arm as one unit. And so hopefully that can show you a different perspective for this camera and this look. But okay, so that was something I wanted to address, is that when I look at your sheets and when I look at these oval eights, to make sure that the ovals are going to take up more than half of your page, that you're being forced to use more of not your wrist, but you're going to be forced to use from your forearm muscle up. Okay, so moving on here. Another thing I wanted to emphasize for your homeworks in the future is when you guys are submitting your homeworks, to go ahead and make these red marks that I've done on your paper. Some of these I couldn't see clearly, like the slant lines, but again, like all you would need is a red pen, and you would need a red pen and a ruler, and then you just want to just go through your work to make sure you're on slants. You see here how this one is on slants, but then when you move over to the next one, it's not. Okay, so it's a slightly off. So like things like that, you would then be able to adjust it as you go through your homework. And then if there's a good one, go ahead and give yourselves a check mark. If you find things that you notice that you didn't like about your strokes or your homeworks, you can also you know, do a little X mark. This is all, again, just to give yourself, guys, the ability to train your eyes so you know how to look at your homework moving forward. I did get a question about these. This happens when you run out of ink while you're writing, and that's totally fine. Sometimes it happens to me even when I'm working on a final piece of paper. And so what I do, usually when that happens, that means the ink has, you know, finished coming out of this eye. And so you can just re-dip it. And then because you already have this outline, I would just then you can just like draw it in. You end up having to draw in the rest of the stroke to finish the letter. But yeah, again, this happens because you just simply ran out of ink, so you just need to redip it. Let me see if there's anything else I wanted to share. Oh, okay. So I also wanted to mention about having a heavy hand versus a light hand. Okay, so I'm sorry. It's kind of shaking a little bit. Okay, so this is Catherine's homework. And then I'm going to show you guys, this is, I believe, is, it says Kay Morcillo. I forget her first name, but if you take a look here at the differences, let me see if I can zoom out a little bit. Okay. So if you take a look here, you can notice right away, we all have different hands, they call it. You can have a light hand or you can have a heavy hand. A light hand person, when they work with stiff nibs, they have to apply more pressure for the nib to exert, you know, to be able to split the tines. If you naturally have a heavy hand, and you work with a nib like Nico G's or all the stiff nibs, you're gonna still be able to produce these thick shades because your hand naturally is just heavier, and so it's easier for you to exert pressure. If that makes sense. And so that's another thing I want you guys to recognize about yourself this week is try to figure out, you know, do I have a light hand? Do I have a naturally heavy hand? And then if you have a heavier hand, then maybe you want to switch over to a stiffer nib. And then if you naturally have a lighter hand and it's really hard for you guys to get the pressure or to have any distinction between your thicks and your thins, you want to just geared more towards having maybe like a more flexible nib, which is why I recommend even Hunt 22 is a little bit more flexible than the G nibs. And then if you want more of a flex, you can even try the Browse 66 EF. Okay, so those are some things I wanted to show you guys. And then let me go through the questions that I also received. So I got a question from Manuela, and she was saying that when she dips the ink into the nib, there's so much ink that flows out right away, and she wasn't able to get like clean strokes onto her paper. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you guys here that if you have your ink in a separate jar like I do here, this one is like called a dinky dip. And they come really small, like you can buy them from John Neal or Paper Ink Arts. They're just like little vials that you can screw them on and you can put like just a little bit that you need. These are the ones I provide for my workshop. They're 1 ounce jars. So these are the ones I provide in my kits, but then I like to transfer them to these ones because it's easier for my nib to dip and then I can scrape it off. But what you wanna do in order to avoid those blobs on your paper or to avoid having ink splat out, then you can, after you dip it, which you should dip it to make sure that it's covering the eye of the nib, okay, right here. So make sure that it's covering, don't go into the flange, but make sure it covers right above that eye. And then right after I dip it, you don't want to just use it right away. Usually I dip it and then at the bottom of here, I scrape it off at the edge of this jar. I just go one here and then if needed, I make a stroke on the top. I just kind of want to wipe off the excess ink. And then what I like to do is I just take any scrap paper, if I have like scrap paper on the side, and then you can, I think I showed this in the video for the course, but you can make either tick marks or sometimes I like to just make little lines, like scribbling lines across. Let me just make sure it's focused. Okay, so you can do like tick marks just to make sure the ink is flowing well, that you're not gonna get all of a sudden like a blob on your paper, or you'll just do like horizontal lines to make sure that you should be able to have these lines, like fine lines without any effort. Like it should be able to come out without any trouble at all. Okay, so these are a couple of things that you can do before you start practicing, just to double check that your ink flow and your nib is prepared, and that everything is ready before you guys begin writing. Okay, so the next question that I got was, how can I make sure that my nib won't catch the fibers of the paper? So I don't know if you guys are experiencing a lot of trouble with catching on the paper while you're writing. So let me, okay, so the first thing I want to show you guys is there's two things you can do when you have that problem. The first thing you can do is you can look at the way that your nib is in relationship to your paper. And maybe I can, okay, so I'm trying to see which is the right way. So, okay, so the first thing that I want to encourage you guys to do is the reason why the nib might be catching on the paper and not flowing well could be because you're putting too much pressure while you're writing. And I totally understand that, with the homeworks, and maybe like if it's your first time, you really want to make sure you're doing a good job. You might unknowingly put so much pressure on yourself that it's like kind of, on your hand, that it's not able to make those smooth lines, and so you want to work on loosening your grip. And something that has helped me is by holding like a crumpled piece of paper. Okay, so it might be easier for me to show you through this lens. Okay, so something that might be helpful is to hold something in your other hand while you're writing. So I suggested to somebody even having like a crumpled paper towel. You can just like crumple it up and then hold it on your other hand. So while you're writing, you're gonna just squeeze this hand while you're writing. And the reason why people are saying that's helpful is because you're keeping your mind off putting so much pressure on your writing hand, and you're being able to just focus on releasing all of your pressure on your non-writing hand. So that's number one. You can try just squeezing either they have those stress balls, I think you can try too, or you can just use a crumpled piece of paper or a paper towel. The second thing I want to just make sure is while you're writing, pay attention to how your nib is in relationship to your paper. So let me see if I don't know if I can show it so directly, but okay, so if you see here, this would be like 90 degrees. If your nib to your paper is 90 degrees, then this is not recommended, because obviously when you're going up for the upstroke, it's going to catch on the fibers of the paper. The angle that I recommend is actually at about 45, maybe halfway through from here. That's my personal angle that fits right because of my hand. If you have a bigger hand and let's say your fingers are bigger, and just we're all made differently, and so I want you guys to figure out what angle is best for your hand and how you write in relationship to the paper. So maybe for you guys, you might feel better to lower it a little bit, to lower the angle so that you're not catching as much. So these are just slight adjustments you can make while you're writing if you're having these issues. Sorry, I'm just checking in the live chat for a second. Okay, Lenny, I think I had okay, so Lenny was asking about how to clean the flange. So yeah, I've gotten some ink in here too by mistake. And I mean, I think the best thing to do is to wash it right away with distilled water. But if you only have tap water or running water, it's fine. You just want to make sure that the ink doesn't harden inside of your flange, or else it might be harder for you to put in your nib in there because of all the hardened ink inside. So if you find that you've gotten ink in there by mistake, the best thing for you guys to do is just to take off your nib right away, rinse it under water, preferably distilled water, and then keep it out to dry fully before you store it in storage. Okay, let me see if I'm missing anything here. Would it be okay to use a rusted nib for writing? I guess it depends on how the nib writes. For me, people are asking like how many weeks I use one nib before switching to a different one. It really depends on the quality of writing that I'm able to do with the nib. So, and usually when I use a new nib, obviously my lines are crisp, they're smooth. I'm able to write effortlessly and just like without putting too much frustration getting the strokes to come out. But if you find that with a nib, if it's part of it is getting rusted, or sometimes actually depending on how you handle the nib, you can even the tips are so sensitive that sometimes if you pull out a nib incorrectly, you can actually twist the tip that is slightly it gets bent a little bit, and so if that happens, you won't be able to write with it again. And so luckily these nibs are not too expensive, so they are very disposable, and I do keep a whole stash of nibs in my jar. But if you find that you're not getting your upstrokes to be thin, if you're having a hard time, just writing in general, compared to your normal, if you all of a sudden feel like the rusted nib is giving you a hard time in producing good writing, then I would just switch it. So it really depends on how you feel and what you see coming out of that nib that kind of indicates to me when to change it out. Dolly was asking, with the Hun 22, you get a lot of pooling. Yeah, Dolly, I'm not sure if you were here for the earlier portion of the question about pooling. Sometimes with the pooling, it can help to have just to add in scraping off the excess ink back and front at the edge of your jar. But another way that you can think about this issue of pooling can be if you exert a pressure suddenly while using a nib. So if I'm using a nib and all of a sudden, instead of a gradual pressure, but if I'm a heavy hander and I put a lot of pressure on it suddenly, then my tines will split too fast. And so then you'll get a huge blob of ink that comes out before it comes back together. And so that might just take some experimenting with what kind of a nib would work best for your specific hand. And so I would play around with those two things. Either it might be because you have too much excess ink in the back of your nib, or it could be about how much pressure you're exerting when you're going down for the downstroke with that particular nib. And so if you're having a lot of issues with the Hun 22, maybe the G nibs might be better for you and your particular hand. So hopefully that helps. Okay, I do have, it's 3:40. I do have a couple more questions that people were asking. I'm just gonna make sure I address all of them before taking any more live questions. Okay, so there's a question about, is it normal to feel your wrist after? Is it because I put too much pressure, or is the pain, or is it gonna go away after the muscles are trained? So usually when I write for a long time, if anyone writes for a really long time, it's only a matter of time when our wrists and our muscles are just gonna have fatigue. It's like running or doing any form of exercise. Our body needs rest. And so depending on what you're doing, but if you feel like your wrist is feeling strained, or if you have a lot of pain after, then a couple things. It could be either you might be hooking your wrist while you're writing, so you're putting so much pressure here. You may be just gripping your pen too hard, so it's like, again, it's like tensing up your muscles here. It can be because we're not having the right like posture when we're sitting at the desk. There's just like a lot of like elements to it that I can't say it's like one particular reason, but I will say that if you are writing and you're feeling like your wrist is hurting, which I've had to, because if I had to do like 300 envelopes and I had to finish it in a week, a rush order or things like that, there's gonna be weeks where, you know, I'm gonna say, you know what, I'm not gonna write for 3 days because I need to give my hand time to recover. You don't want to push your muscles and your hand to the point where, you know, you're gonna like develop like permanent damage to your wrist. And so it does help, I would say, to even wear something like this, like a guard over your, I think they do sell some arm, like wrist, like pressure things to keep your arm more stabilized. And so you can try that as well. But yeah, definitely to work on lightening up your pressure and to feel free to take rest, and even doing like wrist exercises. You can like rotate your wrist before you start. You can just like shake it off. Just taking care of your wrist as calligraphers is really important. Jennifer was asking which nib is stiff and which nib is flexible that's in my package. So the package meaning, I think the beginner nibs that I sell in my shop. I provide 3 nibs. They're the Gelot 404, Nico G's, and Hunt 22. I would say like the Gelot and the G nibs are both pretty stiff. And the reason why like stiffer nibs are easier for beginners is because if you have such a sensitive and flexible nib, then I found that beginners have a really hard time with controlling the nib. But once you start like knowing how to write with, let's say, a stiffer nib, I would recommend trying a flexible nib because it might help with the pressure for your wrist. But I wouldn't like recommend starting off with such a flexible nib because you might have some issues with like catching on fiber or paper or things like that. So hopefully that answers your question. Let me see if there's anything else. So I did get a couple more. Okay, so I got a question about if I'm holding my oblique pen holder as a righty, can I show how a righty should hold it as well? So as you guys know, I'm a lefty, but I do use a right oblique holder, meaning that the flange is on the left side. And so as a lefty, I just keep my index finger on top. I have my middle finger that's kind of underneath my nib, and then I hold the other side of my pen with my thumb. As a right-hander, it's just gonna be switched, as in your index finger is usually on top, and then you have your thumb that's kind of resting at the side here, right behind the nib, basically right behind the flange. And then you're gonna like support it by your under the middle finger. That's gonna kind of cushion and support and hold the bottom of your pen holder. Okay, so when you're, so I was like actually talking to somebody on email about how, you know, when you're sitting on your desk, you don't want to like angle, you don't want to try to like force your pen to be on the slant line. So I have my slant line right here. Okay, this is just a guide sheet that I have for you guys that is just a 55-degree slant. Okay, so when you're on your paper, you don't want to like try to angle your pen to the slant, but I always tell students that you want to first hold your pen and put it down on your desk, like very comfortably. Let me see if I can show you down. I can't pull my computer more down. But you want to put, let's say this is the top of my desk, but you want to put it down comfortably, you know, hold it the way I was showing you guys in the videos. Put it down comfortably, and then you want to slip your paper underneath and then rotate it to see how it would fit on the nib. Okay, so you don't want to put your paper down first and then try to like adjust your arm to it, because then again, look at my posture of my body. It's all contorted and it's twisted. And so it's going to affect the muscles and the comfortability of my writing. And so usually I would just like sit up straight, put my arms down like gently on the table. And then with this guide sheet, I would slip it under and then adjust it so that as even as a righty or a lefty, that you would have it set so that the eye of the nib is going to go parallel to the slant line. Okay, so going back to nib study exercises, somebody asked about wrist movement versus arm movement for the strokes. And so I do want to clarify that copperplate is a shaded script, meaning that unlike Spencerian, where it's mainly going to be monoline script with a bit of a shade, copperplate is going to be every single time you go down for the downstroke, you're going to have a shade. And so I want to practice the arm movement exercises, but when you're actually writing copperplate, we're going to be using combination movement, meaning that we need to be able to know how to use both finger as well as have enough muscular movement in order to make the longer strokes. And so what I mean by that is I don't want you guys only to use finger movements. Remember, finger movements is everything with wrist up, meaning that if you see my wrist on the paper, I'm just going like this, like, or I'm just moving like my hand this way. But I want to be able to keep this part of my arm anchored on the table, use my finger strokes when I'm doing this small lowercase letter shade. But then when I'm doing the larger strokes, I want to be able to use a combination of my finger as well as having the control by using my arm movement as well. So hopefully that kind of clarifies things. When you're doing copperplate, you're not going to ever use like a whole arm movement where your whole arm is off the paper. The only time I find that I'm doing a lot of those, like the entire arm off the paper, is when I'm using a brush pen and I need to write on a huge piece of paper. And so in order for my lines to be very smooth, I tend to just lift my whole arm off the paper and then be able to make my strokes. But when we're working on 1/4 of an inch, or when we're working on such a small X height, we're going to need both finger as well as your arm movement. So hopefully that makes sense. You don't want to use all finger, and you don't want to use all like a whole arm movement as well. Elna asked, any tips to avoid the flange touching my middle finger? Let me see. Actually, when I write as a lefty, the flange, the bottom part of this flange does touch my middle finger, as you can see here. So this is how I hold the right oblique pen. Okay, so as you can see, it's right underneath the flange here. So it does like touch my middle finger. So I'm not sure what you mean by any tips to avoid it. Do you feel like it's causing you pain when you're writing? Do you feel like the flange is causing a discomfort in your finger? Is that why? Okay, so usually when I hold it, you can see the bottom of the flange is touching right here, my middle finger, and then my thumb is on the opposite side. Oh, it bothers. Oh, okay. You can try moving it back, your finger, a little bit. So instead of like hugging it up here, sometimes like when I'm doing more flourishing it's okay. So Elna is saying that's causing her skin to get red. So we don't, I guess like it might be pushing into your skin too hard then. So you might try then, so instead of putting it up here where the flange is right above your middle finger, you can try moving it back a little bit like this so that nothing is touching the flange. Okay, you do have a little bit more control. I find that if you have your finger a little bit closer to the tip, but I have seen, if you want to get a greater range of motion, to move your hand back a little bit, I do that as well, just to loosen up. Okay, so you can even hold it like this, a little bit back so that you're not touching the flange. Okay. Any other questions that you guys have? Okay, we have about 10 more minutes. I'm going to see something else. Oh, okay. So Satara was asking about the width of each letters. So I will show you guys an example next week. I don't think I have one prepared right now as an example, but let's see. The guide sheets kind of measure out the baseline and like the top of the letters. But I guess if we were to talk about the width of the letters, I did measure out my regular letters and how I normally write, and they did come out to between 2/16 to 3/16 of an inch. And so if you need some sort of a guideline, not that there's any strict guide to keeping your letters at a certain width, but generally speaking, copperplate calligraphy is a very narrow and elegant script. It's not meant to be rounded and it's not meant to be thick. Like it's not meant to be wide. And so that's something to keep in mind, because everything that we're doing is based on an oval concept, as well as the letters. If you see an oval, it's not particularly like wide, but you want to keep all of your letter forms in that kind of an oval shape. So naturally that will kind of force your letters to be more narrow. My particular letters are ranging between 2/16 to 3/16 of an inch wide when I'm writing envelopes or when I'm writing place cards or, doing my final pieces. I'll make sure that next time I'll show you guys an example up close. But I remember, taking a ruler and measuring it out just to see how wide my letters tend to be. And okay, so the last thing I was going to demonstrate is about squaring tops and bottoms. But before I do that, I'm just going to look at Jennifer's question. Jennifer was asking, what are some ways you can write straight without using lined paper and without the laser thing we have? I mean, you can draw lines. That's a very old-fashioned way. People just take a ruler and a pencil, they just lightly draw lines and then they erase it. But honestly speaking, having the laser leveler, which I have somewhere in this room, it was less than $15 and I've had it for over 3 years. So it's worth, like, it's not that much investment for thinking about how much time it saves me when I'm working on place cards or when I need to write something straight. And so for me particularly, like, I find that I hate the whole process of erasing lines because I have to wait till the ink dries. And so usually I use a light box, which I spent about $100 something on, and then I use a guide sheet under it and then write on top of it. Or the laser guide, I still use my guide sheet and I use a laser leveler to just give me that baseline. Jennifer was asking, would it smudge the ink? The pencil eraser method, I feel like sometimes if I don't wait enough for the ink to dry, it does smudge the ink. But with the laser and the light box, it shouldn't smudge the ink. Erica was asking, did the width come naturally or because she finds her letters vary in width? I think over time, as you guys find the rhythm in which you're writing, you're going to kind of find your sweet spot. I always like to call that sweet spot, but I feel like after you guys start practicing your letters, and we're going to go to lowercase letters, uppercase letters, you're going to find, a consistent way of writing, and then be able to find the width that you like, I guess, or you naturally write with. So if you find that right now your letters are all kind of like all over the place, it's okay. I think you just want to aim towards, like, at least if you're going to stick to one width, to keep it consistent. Because again, when people are looking at your work, they're going to look at your slant and they're going to look at just consistency in general. Because if we're not consistent with even the width of our letters, and some letters are wide and some letters are skinny, and then they're varying in sizes, then it's going to stand out in the whole piece. And so for me, I would say that it came naturally over time. You'll just kind of find your own rhythm of writing. Is writing copperplate like how Sarah's script writes it? Sarah's script, I think that's, sorry, I forgot. I blanking her IG name, but I think that's the one that I know. Let me just double check. Oh yeah, Sarah's script. So is copperplate? Yes, Sarah's script right now. Actually, I think she's working on Spencerian script too. She has a combination of both Spencerian and copperplate. But yes, that is the shaded script, is what we call copperplate. Okay, so I'm reading through all your live chats. I've done the draw. Okay, sometimes I used to break everything down. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I see. Okay, the last thing I'm just going to demonstrate really quickly, which again is about the squaring tops and bottoms. This particular subject is going to be addressed more in the next module, but because I've gotten a couple questions about it, I'm just going to demo it really quickly today before we wrap it up. We just have like a couple more minutes left before it's 4, and then you guys can go back to your families or back to what you guys are doing. But let me switch my camera one more time just to show you guys how to square the tops and bottoms. Okay. And if you guys have any other questions, make sure you can still do it up there, and then I will make sure to look at it as well. Okay, so I'm going to switch my camera to my hand so you guys can see. Okay, let me zoom in. Okay. So when you guys are doing square tops, I'm not going to use ink so that you can see the tines moving. So this is naturally how I hold. Let me move this camera so you guys can see better. I'll do it like this. Okay. So so when we're squaring tops and bottoms, again, it's usually I just do the retouch method, meaning that, you know, once I get to the bottom of the stroke, I'll just make sure to lift off, and then I'll just like draw a line here if I want to keep it really straight. I'm just gonna wear my sock. My hands are feeling a little, okay. So watch the tines of my nib. So let's say I'm gonna start right here. Here is your line. Okay, and then here we're making sure that the nib is parallel to that slant line right here. Then here's your slant. Okay, so from this position, when we're making the square tops, let me see if you guys can see it. Okay. You're gonna see that your left tine moves over. Okay, I'm gonna do it really slow. So left, I'm gonna anchor my right tine down, and I'm moving my left tine over. Okay, so do you see what happened? Okay, so what I do in slow-mo, I'm noticing that, I'll just draw it here. So I have a point, I'm putting my right tine right here. My left tine is moving out this way, and it's gonna stop right here. But while my left tine is moving this way to the left, I'm noticing that my right tine goes down here and stops right there. Okay, so in a way, you're kind of seeing like a triangle. You're kind of seeing this sort of an angle right here. Okay, so if you look at my tine again from here, okay, you see how it goes like that? Do you see how my right tine moved down a little bit and then my left tine is still on this line? You want to just make sure you're on this line, but you can like manipulate your tine by putting more pressure down this way, or you can press down this way. So I want you to play around with your nib. Okay, you can all start like here parallel to the slant line, but depending on how you push down on your nib, you can push down this way, you can push down this way. It's called manipulating your tine. Okay, so what I notice when I do it is when I start from this point and I move and I make that square top, I notice that my right tine actually goes down. Okay, so that and then when I go down along this slant line, it's able to still maintain this angle. Okay, so let me try it once with ink. Okay, so I have ink in here. I'm gonna just do some scribbles to make sure my ink is flowing. Okay, so from here, I do my square top, and then even pressure down, and then lift off. And when I lift off, I actually lift my nib more to the left. Okay, so I don't know if you guys can, maybe I can, okay, let me move better. Let's show it like this. So square my top, come all the way down. And then from here, when I get to the bottom, it helps to close your nibs to the left before you lift your pen. But again, this is like really hard to do consistently. And honestly, when I'm doing my work, I'm not too stuck up on getting the square tops and bottoms. And if I want to, I just like make sure I draw a line like at the bottom. So usually I'll go down, lift off, and then I'll just finish off my bottom stroke. And then if I need to add in a little bit on top here, just to make it really straight, I can always like retouch when the ink is wet. Okay, so let me do that again from here. Okay, hopefully you'll see it with the nib goes down and then goes down the slant. From here, close off to your left, and then you lift your pen. Okay. Okay, but the purpose of the second homework that we're doing right now is just to maintain an even stroke. Okay. Maintaining an even stroke is most important for this homework. Even stroke, and also, again, if that happens, let's say I ran out of ink here, this is what I do usually. I just like draw it back in and fill up that spot. And making sure that you're on slant. Okay, so this one is curving a little bit towards like the left. So this one is not good. Okay, so and then hopefully like this will help too. Before, when I was talking about breaking it up into thirds, having a thin stroke and then gradually increasing pressure until you get to the bottom, and then fixing up that bottom stroke. Okay, so I think that pretty much is what I wanted to share with you guys today. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you, Erica, Jennifer, Nydia, Carol, Faye, Lenny. Thank you for staying up and being here. And hope you guys have a good night. And for the next one, again, it'll be the same format. It'll just be going over some homework, what I see you guys are doing great in, what I want to see you guys working on, as well as taking questions and hopefully being able to demonstrate things that you won't be able to see or something that I might have missed during the video. So thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye guys.